Hey everyone, welcome to another installment of Open Air presented by the Harvey B. Gantt Center in Charlotte, North Carolina. Today we have a great guest. Wesley holds a BA in art and is currently freelance designer. He says that the biggest impact on his career as a design student and as a professional has been realizing that good design can speak louder than he ever can. Wesley has planned to build a thriving career in the industry, and he's working to bridge the gap between his fine arts and design background, combining traditional painting with digital design. Wesley's work is part of the Gantt Center's current show, My Presence is Present, an exhibition that navigates through surreal African American experiences as told by 20 emerging and established contemporary artists in and around the Carolinas. The show is on view through January 15th, 2024. We'll dive deeper into the exhibition in today's conversation as well. So please join me in welcoming Dammit Wesley to the conversation.
What's up?
How are you? Yeah, well, I hope I'm coming in loud and clear.
Oh yeah, I can hear you. You're a little choppy, but I can hear you coming in.
Okay, good, good. So first of all, I want to thank you for joining us today. I mean, it's sometimes a lot to ask artists and other creatives to take time out of their schedules to have these conversations. I think there's a lot that we can kind of get into and unpack today. My questions aim to delve into your artistic philosophy, your professional experiences, and your future aspirations. So, I have a lot of questions, so I'm going to just jump right into it, and then we can just see where the conversation flows. So, something in your bio stood out to me, and that was this idea of good design having a more powerful voice than words. So, can you describe the moment you realized that good design has a more powerful voice than words?
I think for me, it was the early 2000s, and I was a kid that would go to the grocery store with his parents, and I would get lost in that magazine aisle. And I was such a big fan of like Vibe and Source, and I didn't have access to a lot of music at that point in time, but just the spreads and the layouts and the photography and the fashion, it just sucked me in, right? So I was able to live this lifestyle that one, I wasn't experienced, but B, just due to my geography being in Greenville, South Carolina, I wasn't able to experience, hip hop in its truest essence in the early 2000s. So that was the moment I just said I wanted to be a graphic designer, right? Being able to, I guess, illustrate and tell the stories of Black people that I never met before.
Yeah, yeah, that's powerful, and I remember those times fondly as well, being in those magazine aisles myself. Um, so talk about how your background in graphic design or digital design has influenced your fine art, or vice versa.
Um, I don't want to say vice versa. I think both of those things work in tandem. I grew up going to every free fine art program that existed under the sun. In Greenville, South Carolina, there is a specialty school called the Fine Arts Center. Um, from the third grade on up, the only thing you have to do is essentially audition. You have access to free college level classes for whatever you're choosing. I was a visual arts kid, so everything from drawing, painting, ceramics, printmaking, jewelry making, whatever it was, I did it up until the age of like 17. Also in between there, he was a computer geek. I had access to the internet. So I was bootlegging illegal copies of Photoshop, and I was essentially teaching myself um, how to make compositions, render 3D images. Uh, Initially, I just wanted to learn how to make manga. And from all the tutorials I found on the internet, they said that like coloring and shading comics and manga, you had to use Photoshop. Never quite figured it out, but I learned a lot of other things in like that process of going back and forth.
And I want to talk. You mentioned where you grew up, and I'd kind of there to being in Charlotte.
Let's see. I've always had family in the Charlotte area. Um, so being in Greenville, Charlotte just looked like the big city. If you know where Greenville, South Carolina is, you're located right between Charlotte and Atlanta. And in the 90s, those are the two biggest metropolitans that you have access to, right? So Charlotte's always kind of been like this like citadel, this shiny city on the hill. Also, they just have some of the best sports franchises in history. Like they don't win anything. We have no rings, but just branding wise, when it comes to just like graphic design and personality and characters, the Panthers and the Hornets, they were just excellent. So um, me coming to this city was just a natural migration. It was going to happen at some point or another. It's been calling my name.
Yeah, and I imagine it's also opened up some new opportunities. How do you balance that? I mean, you're a painter and you're also a graphic designer. Like, how do you balance those two different areas of your professional or passion slash professional life?
I don't. I I gave up a long time ago on. Yeah, it's honestly it's not worth it. Um, I think I had the same delusions of grandeur that all young graphic designers had when they got out of college. I was gonna go freelance. I was gonna work for an agency. I was gonna make 50K a year. 2 years out, and none of those things happened for me. But I realized if I was going to get opportunities, I was going to have to make them. So I more or less use my skills to create events and experiences that could really showcase my talent as an artist. Um, some of you might know about this great Detroit performer slash entertainer. His name is Marshall Mathers, aka Eminem. And at one point in time, he was doing something called the Rap Olympics, in which he would let all these people come together in an old warehouse and they would just rap their asses off. The real purpose of the event was for him to prove that he was the best rapper in Detroit, which he already knew, but he needed a vehicle to do so. For me, just being a hungry graphic designer and I guess artist or creative, I was trying to create events that could really show how much skill I had um, in my distinct field.
And so that's obviously like very entrepreneurial, right? And I have some questions specifically about that, but I want to just kind of this like project that you worked on as a graphic designer, or even as a artist that you feel edge where you're like, this is man, you figured it out.
Okay. Um, okay. You say figured it out. I don't want to lie to anybody online and make it seem like I've figured anything out. I'm still very much a child of art at heart. So I'm constantly poking the bear, trying new things and seeing what works. But I think the moment when I really realized that I was like on the right path for what I was doing was I took advantage of an opportunity in college. I went to an NAACP meeting because it was some girl I was talking to. I asked why she was always going to those meetings. I didn't understand the purpose of the organization. Like I knew who the NAACP was, but as a college organization, they weren't doing much. So I go there, sit in the back. They're discussing absolutely nothing. I start talking crazy to them. And I'm like, if I was in charge, I could get your numbers up. And the president said, do it. I was like, okay, cool. So I came up with some programming, and that programming turned into a mock concert. I went to Winthrop University, very small college in Rock Hill, South Carolina, very large black population. And every homecoming, we're missing out on like rappers like T.I. and Gucci Man, Pastor Troy, Travis Porter. They're all relatively cheap at this time, but we don't have access to them. So I used NAACP as a vehicle to do this project where I could essentially create branding, promotions, and videos for a fake homecoming concert that was happening at this college. And we I did such a good job that we were getting phone calls asking how much were tickets to the Shorty Low concert because Shorty Low was big at the time. And I was just literally dressing my friends up and photoshopping them into album covers and the posters that look reminiscent of said artist branding. So I think I think that was the first time I realized that like I can really manipulate people into existing in a reality that they know doesn't exist for them. And that's where it started, honestly.
And well, I mean, it's a great community that might have otherwise been too intimidating for others to even take on. They would have said, like, okay, so, you know, you've accepted my challenge, but now what do I do, right? But you actually,
Mhm.
move forward with it, right? What kind of doors? What talk to me about other doors that opened for you because it had to lead to other things that sort of moved you forward, especially in the graphic design world.
Okay. Let's see. Let's see. Doors. Every door that's open for me when it has come to graphic design has been more or less something that I push for, right? Um, I was the student that struggled in my design classes, not because I didn't grasp the material, but because I was loud, I was bold. My color choices weren't palatable to the status quo at the time, which was more of your Southern home and garden, right? They wanted you to design on the grid. They didn't want you to break the barriers. And I just think being a young, educated black man from South Carolina who was overly aware of the type of opposition he was going to face when being educated by white people, I just pushed, right? I had enough confidence to know that what I was doing was significant and important, and it was right for me and my people at the time. Um, but honestly, all those things I did were just building up my community, right? We never know who's in need of us until I guess we like get in the lighthouse and start sending out signals for people to come to us. And the journey from 2004 to 2023 has been that of essentially community building, right? So from Winthrop University to Charlotte to Dion and Davita's original Dup and Swat that was located in Noda. For all the Charlotteans in the chat, they probably remember the days of Dup and Swat being behind Amelie's. Um, I did way too many events there, got away with way too much shit. And that sort of evolved into a lot of underground things that we were doing. We will rent out studios and photography spots, old church basements, and we would do these things called Dammit Fanny. I worked with DJ Fannie Mae forever ago to do this artist series in which she would curate sounds and artists, and I would curate the visuals and the arts. And it was just an opportunity to just really shine a light on all this arts and entertainment that we had in the city of Charlotte. And that snowballed into something much larger. And that's how we got to this point here at Kemp North, and where we're now doing something like Durag Fest, where we're seeing roughly 2,500 to 3,000 people every Juneteenth. Um, I mean, so like, what was the question? I'm rambling right now. You got to help me
It's
out.
no, no,
You got to
no,
help me.
no, no. You're giving me good answers. It's not a ramble at all. I mean, few things come to mind. Like one is that, well, first of all, um, although you and I've talked before in person from time to time in different instances in Charlotte, this is the first time we're having like this kind of like in-depth conversation. What I'm finding is that we have a lot of interesting things in common. Not necessarily in terms of like the curatorial work that I'm doing right now and other things, but in terms of our history and how we entered into the creative field. So, little side note, and I'm not going to take too much time because this is your interview, not mine. But little side note is that when I was in college, I decided that, and again, we're going back to the early '90s. I decided that I wanted to launch this company that was focused on helping brands get exposure for their products through product placement. So initially, like placing a lot of product in music videos and things like that. And then that grew into a creative agency where we were actually doing ads for brands, and it's something I did for almost 13 years. But I did it from
Nice.
scratch. I had a business partner who also went to school with me, and we just built this company literally with just like $1 out of each of our pockets. So let's just do it. So I could totally relate to that. Like I'm just gonna make it happen. And
Mm-hmm.
the other thing that's interesting is that I had been promoting parties in New York City around the same time, doing artist showcases with a lot of people who are very famous now, but we're just on a come up then. And I could totally relate to that idea of like you got this idea and you just need to like make it happen, and you don't need anyone else's permission. You just got to make it happen. Like I'm
Hmm.
totally into that. Talk to me a little bit more about Durag Fest. I've never attended. I've heard of it, but what's the whole thing about?
Okay, Durag Fest. Durag Fest simply existed as my attempt to create some sort of exhibition around blackness and black culture that happens specifically on Juneteenth. I don't know about for y'all, but for me in general, when I go to Juneteenth celebrations, I feel alienated because I'm not West African, right? And is essentially African American holiday. And I felt like there was a bit of a disconnect between all of the incredible, powerful cultural things that we have created here in America for America. And we're just not acknowledging those things on essentially like our Liberation Day. So I figured I would create this event, or at least like this showcase, that sort of highlighted African American culture and nuances specifically, not to undermine
Hmm.
our West African origins, but I feel like all too much we as Black people struggle with our identity, right? And I can see why people will struggle with not having a long enough history. You know, being African American, you're roughly 500 to 600 years old. Everybody else has a jump on you, right? But culturally, we have done a lot in just a few centuries. And that was sort of the significance of Do Rag Fest. Now, uh, when we through the event, it kind of snowballed into something else. We were expecting roughly 300 people. We had 1,200 people show up to just this little studio that we're in right now. So we just did our best to keep the momentum going from there. And I think the timing was right. The Black Panther movie had just dropped a couple of months before. We were in the midst of, I mean, when are we not in the midst of like turmoil and police violence? But there was an expectation for people to show up and participate in this event in which they don't normally do. At Black Market, we do a lot of themes. We're always looking for an excuse to dress up and be in costume. And I think this was one of the first events where people had a simple enough garment to work with that they could really design it and make it their own. So we saw a lot of people coming out with full body do rags, embroidered do rags, bedazzled. I'm talking men and women. They're going above and beyond. They're treating this like an actual Met Gala. And a bit of pettiness, I specifically placed the event in our studio because I know on Fridays there's a lot of traffic that walks by us to get down to the boiler yard area where they have events that are catered to a more Caucasian palate. On that particular day, it was a luau. So we're forcing white families to walk through this mass of Black people and do rags. And they kind of have to come to terms with the fact that these thugs, they're not scary. And my kids keep calling them princesses because they're literally wearing gowns from their scalps and stuff, right? And that was just essentially the origin point of Do Rag Fest.
You also mentioned Black Market, and had a conversation with Carla, a couple of months ago. Maybe you can talk a little bit about the organization and what you do and the collaboration, what you are sort of like doing in the community.
Okay. This is gonna sound really underwhelming, but Black Market did not really become an organization per se until maybe like 3 years into us existing. Um, a friend of mine, Janelle Dunlap, told me about this cool warehouse space called Camp North, and come check it out. They did tours, right? I thought it was weird that they were doing tours of a property, but showed up, and the woman that was giving the tour, Varian, was aware of my antics. So I just asked her after the tour was over. I was like, "Hey, can we do a show? Can we do an exhibit? Like, I want to do something like Art Basel in that giant warehouse. Never been to Basel, but I seen pictures, so I figured how hard can it be to just fill up a warehouse with artwork, right?" She said the warehouse was off limits, but she walked me to this garage and said that essentially if I wanted to be there, to let her know if in a week. So I go home. I talked to my roommate, Will Jenkins. He's an artist as well. He's currently in the exhibition, My Presence is Presence. And I tell him, hey, we got an opportunity to get a studio. I really don't know about it, but if you're in, I'm in. His response is, hell yeah. We essentially have a studio in our 2 bedroom apartment. And when I say studio, I mean there's a full gallery of paintings on one wall. He has essentially made a psych wall with photo equipment in the dining room. And then we have a rotating roster of roughly 6 people: photographers, actors, poets, and DJs sleeping on the couch. We got to get all this shit out of our apartment, right? So that's how Black Market started. We need to get all the people and the things out of our living space, right? But that living space just kind of moved with us to the studio. And I think that's one of the, I feel like that's one of the things that really like separates us from most groups and stuff. We never called ourselves a collective. Carla refers to us as a sorority, which at this point I think is kind of true. If this is a franchise, I would probably be Vin Diesel, artist family, or whatever he says. But that's it. Black Market. I feel like Carla's maybe like the missing piece to come in. She actually takes the time to do the academic work and write the essays and the papers and the statements. Me and Will are just like rabid dogs latching on to whatever projects and opportunities we can find. I think it's just worked out. It's a good trinity.
Yeah, well, that kind of origin story is important, and nothing to be downplayed. I mean, we've all heard about. I mean, you can go on a whole you're starting a company in their garage, and it's like becomes almost like a romantic thing. So I just like say embrace that, embrace that story, that legacy, that path that you guys have been on, because it's actually going to be even more important when you're talking to other people, younger people coming up, trying to figure out their path and their way. And with that said, like what, and I know you already engaged with people that are younger than you, are probably asking you questions like, how do I become a graphic designer? How do I become an artist? And what's funny is that people will often ask you those questions when they already are the thing, right? But they don't even realize it's
Mm-hmm.
like, how do I become an artist? Are you already an artist, right? Like, so, like where you want to take it. But what kind of conversations do you find yourself having with younger people in the community around the creative process and the creative field?
It's literally just that conversation. For the okay, so I I have built a bit of a reputation around here, right? So a lot of people would come around to ask me like, how do I be an artist? How do I do this? I want to be on your level, and I don't really have time to tell you how to be you. So if I see that you're capable enough, or if I think you're capable enough, I'll just throw you into the fire, right? I treat everything like a hazing process up here. Most people that come to the studio um, know that we talk kind of hard, right? We talk hard to people. Me probably the hardest, but I just think about how I got to the places where I am, and it was like hard knock. You know what I'm saying? Like nobody's gonna give you opportunities, and when if you're in a place like Charlotte, North Carolina, you don't have cool agencies to go to, right? You don't have a entertainment hub, right? If you want to do something that deals with like film and photography, movies, you're gonna have to go to Atlanta. Okay. If you want to do something dealing with like fine arts, I'm talking like with like collectors that are dropping 6 figures on pieces, that's not here in Charlotte. That's elsewhere, right? So if you're going to be here, you have to create these opportunities. You got to be very DIY about your practice. And there's only but so much I can do for me and everybody else. But I will most definitely push and nudge and harass you and coerce you and curse you out into whatever success is on the other side for you. I can't tell you what it is, but I will find a use for you and I will do my best to put you to work. And if it's too much for you, now you know. Now you know what you're built for.
Yeah, yeah, no, no, I can totally understand that, because most of the things that we want to do, even if we get a degree for it, no one's gonna just like hand it over to you. I mean, it's like a rare situation. And oftentimes, if it gets handed over to you, you end up dropping the bag, right? Like, because it's like you
Yeah.
don't even value it because somebody just
You
gave
don't
it
want
to
to
you, and and
you don't want it
and
like
it's
that.
a,
You don't
it's a
want to admit.
cliche, but but it's a cliche, but it's so true, right? It's so true. Um, so I want to talk a little bit about your painting and sort of like the fine art, aspect of your creative output. So you're in the current show at the Gantt Center. We have some images of your work that we'll get on screen in about, like 4 or 5 minutes. But um, talk to me about like this journey. So you talked about the influence of hip hop and media on your mind around graphic design. But when did you start approaching canvases? When did you start approaching art in that way?
Mm, I think the turning point for me was experiencing ABL, aka Art Beats and Lyrics. I think it was maybe like my senior year in college. I pick up this magazine. It has all the free events lined up in the back, and it says ABL, sponsored by Jack Daniels. And I was like, that's all I need to hear. So I ride up there, get out the car, walk inside, and it's like these beautiful women in front, and they're like, "Here's your drink ticket." I was like, "Oh, thank you, drink ticket." And I go around the corner, and when I tell you that was the first time in my life I had seen black art by black people in a black space, right? It wasn't real. Okay. It was a whole new reality for me. Like, I'm looking at a wall of toy trains that have actual airbrush graffiti on them. I'm looking at show photography of gigantic paintings of a child version of Galactus playing marbles with the universe. All the while, there is a cover band doing all LL Cool J and Def Jam music, campy and punk and hip hop, all at the same time. And I think that's just kind of like when I double down on the whole notion idea of I don't have to paint anything white. I don't have to placate to anything culturally that I don't understand or feel comfortable in. And I feel like for a lot of black people, like you don't know it exists until you see it. And that was the moment I saw it. And that just really changed the trajectory of where I was going, right? I didn't have to work at the Vibe or Source magazine at that point, right? I could legitimately just make whatever I want happen. And I've sort of just been like chasing the coattails of Jabari and W celebrating 20 years of ABL as of this year. It's hard to do anything for 20 years, much less a traveling art exhibition that has maintained a level of quality and stature like that. So that was really like the turning point. And then, getting Instagram and being able to see just more black artists. If anybody's taking an art history class, do not exist in books. They're just not there, right? And being able to just sort of get to know the in crowd, get into, I guess, like this secret society, this secret circle of black artists, and seeing them become your peers and just watching them grow. I met Fahamu one time at the Gantt. I saw an ad on Facebook. I just thought it was a dance party. I had no idea Big Homie was a painter, right? I didn't know what the McCall Center or residency was. I just showed up and I saw him there in the hammer pants. And we had a dance battle. He gave me a book. He signed it. I still have the book to this day, right? And that was one of the things that I really took in. I'm like, I can just really focus on being a black man. I could just focus on just blackness in art. And it doesn't have to be like, I don't have to take this seriously. Like, it can be absurd. I think at that time he was playing like several characters within his work. He was making TV shows, music videos, just he was just being a parody of everything black in Atlanta. And this is like what, 2007, 2008. So
Yeah, it's
these are
funny
like,
because that's around the same time. Yeah, that's around the same time that I met Fahamu, and I think he's a good example to talk about. And so we did an open. I've known Fahamu for since '9, in that sort of period. I've known of his work a little bit, and we become friends over the years. And I did an open air with him like 2 years ago as well. So you're both been on open air. Um, he's actually one of the most educated people I know. It's like he's like
mhm.
super smart dude. But his success was just going to make my own path. I'm not wait for the art world to just say the door is open, come on in. He just decided through his painting ability and through his knowledge of graphic design and media that he was just coming. So yeah, let's look at some of your artwork. We've been talking now for about 30 minutes. Now it's time to kind of get into some images. So what I would love to do for each of the 7 images that we have is, just take a moment, share whatever you'd like to share about it, and then I'll ask you a question.
Okay, so this piece comes from a series that I started in. When was the first Talking Walls? When did that happen? Oh my God, let's say 2017. Okay, yeah, so like around 2017, another collective in Charlotte started this event called Talking Walls. It was a mural festival, right? Incredible idea. Was done with almost no money, but all the way around, I was given an opportunity to do this mural, and I did a piece called Strange Fruit. I had like prime real estate in Uptown, so I figured I need to do something that's going to get me in trouble, or at least it's going to force the city to like buff the wall, right? I did it. Nobody buffed it. Nobody talked about it, and I felt some kind of way, right? Until I realized a lot of people really didn't understand like the messaging, or at least just the history behind that term, strange fruit. So I continued to make these pieces and like compositions, using words and images to sort of like convey this sinister commercialized history of racism that exists within America, right? So the Judy Jetson piece that I currently have is sort of like an adaptation of that. I have several pieces within the series that use Smurfs and Sambos. I'm not too sure if a lot of people know this, but a lot of the cartoons that we have today are derived from minstrel shows, right? So the same cartoonish performances that these white men would put on when they're making fun of black people, animators went and copied those same performers, their looks, the gloves, right? Those voices, and those became what we know today as cartoons. So just sort of like dipping into the Hanna-Barbera bag and seeing what ideas I can pull and get away with led to these series of compositions.
So this was a public. Can you scale and the process of making it?
Okay. The process of making these was what's the best way to do this? It was improvised. it was very much improvised. I would quite literally go into Photoshop or Illustrator, pull up an image, vectorize it, and then immediately project it onto a canvas. And I would move pieces around within Photoshop and then move the canvas around to just sort of like get these compositions and stuff, right? So it's very much using digital technology and traditional techniques at the same time to essentially like sketch out these ideas. I'm horrible at sketching and planning out ideas for a lot of these pieces. I literally make them on the fly, and we are course correcting as we go along.
I love it. I love it. Let's go to the next image.
There we go.
So again, share what you can, and then ask you some follow-ups.
Okay, so this piece is a precursor to my last solo exhibition, Ballad of Bell Noches. I love the club. I was a club rat, right? And I'm a millennial who's old enough to remember when you go out on Thursday, Friday, and Saturday nights, there will be a picture man in the club there to take your pic because cell phones were shitty. You even with the flash on, you only have but so many pixels, right? So there'll be a trained professional, an actual artist there to commemorate your moment, your experience. And a lot of times that was the only artifact from these like wild nights out that people would have. I came across an archive on Tumblr and Twitter of just like these incredible, like wild ass photos collected from all across the South and Detroit. I didn't find as many on the West Coast, but specifically in New Orleans, Atlanta, and Detroit. some of the best club pictures ever, right? And I just wanted to do something to just sort of show love and appreciation for not only those people, but those photographers, for those clubs. A lot of them don't exist. A lot of them do. A lot of clubs had to change names, but for the most part, I don't feel that Black people really have the space or the grace to celebrate the way they want to in the spaces they want to without being vilified or being called ghetto or what other colloquialism exists for them. So this was a test piece that I did to just sort of see what direction I could take a project like this in. And it led to my latest show.
So, a couple questions. One, can you talk about materials? Can you talk about scale and unpack the title for me a bit? Title of the show and the work.
Okay, so this was probably the largest show that I've ever done. Majority of the pieces were over 48 inches. I was working on a lot of raw, unstretched canvas. I work on unstretched canvas because I want my paintings to emulate the backdrops that
Mm.
people would stand in front of in the club. And the Ballad of Bella Noche's twofold works because I think of like epic nights out. I feel like everybody in the South has gone to some hole in the wall, some hood ass spot. You don't know how you got there. You were intoxicated before you got in the car. It was big as hell. You floated through time and space to the middle of nowhere. You had a ball. A fight breaks out. Everybody runs. You're in the parking lot. You hear two gunshots. You look over the car. There's a tree. It's on fire. Nobody knows why. Nobody questions it. It's just some dude outside with his shirt off talking about who else wants to fuck with Hollywood Cole. You blink. Now you're at the Waffle House. 20 sausage biscuits. Nothing has to make sense. But these are all experiences that we all have, right? And they're always fun. And I just sort of like think about like poems like the Odyssey, in which people set out on these epic adventures. It is just like step by step, they run into an obstacle or a problem and they overcome it. And I feel like the process of getting off work, getting your hair cut, getting your hair done, finding a fresh fit, finding a ride, getting a park, getting past security, bumping into somebody, getting chin checked, going to the bathroom, avoiding the bathroom attendant, avoiding tipping the bathroom attendant, even though he keeps trying to put mints in your pocket, right? It's all these bizarre things that happen, and we just have this social agreement, this social contract that we're going to go out and we're going to do this every Friday and Saturday. And I know I'm putting my life in danger, but it's worth it because I feel like when you're Black, you don't have that much to look forward to, and there's a certain level of praise and spirituality that happens in these clubs, and these photographers were there to capture these spiritual moments essentially. So that's that's part of the reason why I call it Ballad of Bella Noche's, and also the viral video of Hazel London asking, if you can't go to Bella Noche's, where the hell can you go? If I can't have joy in the club, where am I supposed to find it?
That's great. That's so great. It's funny because well you're a good storyteller, but also like it's so true, and it reminds me some of the experiences I had when I was younger in the whole club thing. And just like one little thing I'll share is that if we got back to Bed-Stuy where I grew up, A train at like 5 o'clock in the morning, then we would just sit and wait for the sun to come up so that we could officially say we broke day. That was like it's like you just had like, it's like you could have just gone straight home, but it's like, you know what, the sun's gonna come up in like
Nah, it's
45 minutes.
the
We're just
night's
gonna
not over. It's not over with yet.
sit here and let the sun come up to just really say that we had a great night.
You gotta conquer the night. You gotta conquer it. So well done.
Let's go to the next image. Okay, same
Okay.
thing.
So same thing, yeah. So this is a follow-up. This is another follow-up image of that same series. Here I'm experimenting with with different tones. I've always been a fan of like Kerry James Marshall, and I didn't want to necessarily just paint my figures black, right? There's so many ways to show that like black people are black people. So I was playing with like heat maps, inverted colors. In the background, I was swiping Gucci wallpapers and putting those as like the backdrops within the club to try to maybe elevate the experience with like a bit of luxury. I love the image. I don't necessarily think the idea of Gucci wallpapers fits within the tone of the paintings, but this is definitely one of my favorite test paintings from the series.
And so again, was this one of those photos that was from the drop that you described?
Yes, yeah. This is another image that I just found scrolling through Twitter and Tumblr one night. Just
It's
amazing work.
wild. It's wild because I'm my brother and my cousin. You could just it's exactly same pose, exactly the same. Like it could just be them. It's, same setup. Let's go to the
We've all
next
hit the
image.
squad at least once. So
Please share this work.
this is yeah, so I believe this one was called Free Before 11. And this was from a Freaknik thread that I found. And it's just this group of women, all that Freaknik. I think it was like Freaknik 95. This is the evolution of my work process. While I was doing this, I was working on a side project called like Olympia. And with the Olympias, I challenged myself to make pieces and not use any black or any white, right? So I essentially changed how my workflow went, and I also changed my color palette. And I sort of like came up with this process of painting this super rich, super brown skin on top of red and blue backgrounds, and then coming in and just focusing on highlights to show off more of the contours of the bodies and the figures. And this was a result of that process.
So you said no black and no white. And what was
No
the
black, no
reason for
white.
not using? What was the reason for that?
So I dabble in oil painting a little bit, and I'm I work for acrylic paint. I play with oil, and I really like color. And there's just something about using black and white that strips so much vibrancy out of your work, right? And I feel like it's easier to see this like within like fashion and stuff. You know, you can elevate a fit by choosing a navy or a dark brown versus a black, right? It's too much, right? As a value, it will just deplete and suck all the life out of your work. Um, and also like I needed to get a little bit better at color mixing. So this was like a way for me to do both of those things. I feel like I had a conversation with Juan Logan one time, and just his process of laying down color on top of other colors to get certain values and sheens and vibrancies. He's sort of like a mad scientist with like the process of how he lays these colors down. I figured it'd be something to it, and I think people use black and white as a bit of a crutch when trying to put their
Mm,
values
mm.
together. Yeah,
Interesting,
not to be a
interesting.
color nerd. Yeah, for any of the artists out there that are listening and stuff, it doesn't matter what color you use; it's the value of the color. Okay, you can use red on red as long as the value is darker than what you're using. You can make those shadows and those highlights. So
Right,
try it. Trust me, you're gonna
right.
love it.
Let's go to the next image. I think we have three more images, and I have some more follow-up questions.
Sweet. Okay, so this piece was inspired by everybody's favorite rapper, Fabo. He has a song called Geeked Up, in which he's saying that he's starting to see spaceships on Bankhead. And me and Carla have been going back for the past year, talking about how we're essentially off of Afrofuturism and we're focused on Afrosurrealism, right? Um, being Black in America is a surreal experience as is, but there are some Black people that live in their own worlds. And then you have places like Atlanta, which is its own separate pocket dimension, right? And just having seen so much in Atlanta, having watched the show Atlanta, having been a fan of a lot of Southern hip hop that has come out of that city, I just kind of wanted to pay homage, but also just visualize that idea of like spaceships on Bankhead. What would that look like? And also, I wanted to play around with like male figures. So I'm thinking about starting a series about a guy named Cicero in the same way I have my Olympias that are play on the actual Olympia painting. I would like to shift focus a little bit and kind of focus on the story of this slave named Cicero, a man who was so badass that even in death, his slave masters could not get the best or the last word from him.
Let's go to the next image in the interest of time because I'm keeping an eye on the clock.
Okay. All right. So yeah, this is. I mean, you know, it was the early 2000s. All right. If you didn't have a FUBU jersey and Jabot jeans, I really don't know what you were doing. It just had to happen. So this is the moment that I remember from like my own youth. Going to the mall, finding a FUBU jersey, legit or bootleg, and the biggest pair of oversized jeans and a belt that I could possibly find. This is how we all looked before they made us dress business casual.
You know, the thing about FUBU and the brand, I mean, it's kind of like become more of a legendary brand now than it was in its height. It's like, it's one of those things where when I think about what that company represented at the time when it came out, I mean, obviously it's gone through a lot of changes and no need to even go down that road. But yeah, I mean, I remember those days fondly.
Okay,
That was the uniform.
Quick question. Were you the one responsible for getting the FUBU hat into LL Cool J's Gap commercial? Were you behind that? Did you have a part?
So short answer is no. But the interesting thing was spent a lot of time with the founders of FUBU around that same time, and also spent a lot of time with LL Cool J around that time. We'll have some conversations offline about the whole hip hop rabbit that I've been down. Yeah, I got some stories to tell, but I can't tell them here.
Okay, I need them stories. I need them.
Yeah, man. Yeah, it's you know, like hip hop. Take a moment, hip hop. This year was the 50th anniversary of pop for sure, and kind of people have heard that like a million times. So, but I do think worth just taking a moment to talk about how hip hop was the platform and the gateway to much Black entrepreneurship. I just can't even imagine my life. I don't even think I would be, even though the work I do now has almost little or nothing to do directly with hip hop. I don't even think I would be in the profession I'm in. I don't even know what I would be.
Now listen, no. You got to give hip hop more credit. I feel like we're getting off topic, but it has to be said. I've always viewed hip hop as like the college of theater and performing arts, right? It's always been that. I went to a very liberal art school. So every pillar of hip hop was a college that I got to participate in, right? You have your school of dance, you have your school of arts, you have your school of music, you have your school of theater, right? You have your MC, you have your DJ, you have your B-boys, right? You have your artists. It's always been there, right? Hip hop has been a source of education for so many people. I feel like since it's been commercialized, a lot of that education has been stripped away intentionally, but it has always been there. One of my biggest things, one of my biggest gripes about the city of Charlotte right now is that our nightlife and entertainment scene sucks, right? No nightlife scene, there's no art scene. And I remember being younger and learning that Fab Five Freddy was like, he was the guy, right? Not only was he an artist, but he was the dude in the hip hop scene. He was the one bringing the celebrities to the talent, and he was able to use his vehicle of hip hop to get to know and talk to all these people, right? So you've always been there, like, if you're within the realm of hip hop, you're a tastemaker. You know what's popping, you know what's good, right? You just can't go liking any kind of trash, like
Mm-hmm.
it's just not possible, right? So I don't know. Are there more pictures that we need to be talking about?
We got one more, I'm not mistaken. I think we got one more.
Oh, there we go. Okay, so yeah, this is actually a new piece. I did this last week. It's called Olympia Can't Wink. And this is actually derived from AI images that I composited in Midjourney and then took into Photoshop and just sort of rearranged. I know when AI art became more readily available, people were throwing their fists at the sky, screaming at God in the clouds, saying, "Why have thou forsaken me?" This technology is going to take away jobs, is going to kill industries. And to a degree, they're right. But much like any tool, people can either use it or abuse it. And for me, in my particular process, I use AI to just speed up my workflow. It's much
Yeah,
for
yeah.
for a person like me who doesn't like to sketch and likes to improvise. I can create prompts that will essentially put together compositions for me, and then I can go back in and edit and change and move those things around within Photoshop. So now I have a better idea what this painting is going to look like as an end result. So to everybody out there,
Yeah, I mean,
use the tools you got.
yeah, I'm happy to hear you talk a little bit about AI because um fertile ground for maybe a future conversation, like a post-hype AI conversation. A lot more people are sort of up in arms about what the implications of AI around, and the fact that people have actually been using it in better hands. Platforms like Bard and Midjourney and ChatGPT can do. I think there might be some different opinions about it, especially for artists. I definitely am packing sometime soon. I got to figure out how I'm going to do that. But we did have a question come in about any of the works for sale.
Oh, yes. So actually, if you're currently in the city of Charlotte, or if you're going to be in Charlotte this weekend, several of the pieces that you saw within this chat will be available for purchase at the $100 art fair. This is another ridiculous idea I had, in which I said I want to take on the task of creating my own fair, affordable art fair. So this is artist run, artist led. We take absolutely zero commission from any of the pieces. So if you want to come out, you want to support me or other artists, purchase their work, they get 100% of what they charge. So ethical. It's a great way to get last minute gifts because I know you ain't been shopping. You're not trying to go to that mall, and you don't need to give Jeff Bezos no more money. So come on down here, mess with the boys. We got you.
Now that's dope, man, and it's just another example of how you've been, you know, existing in all of these exciting realms of individual as an entrepreneur person and someone other people. I mean, it's beyond commendable. It's just important. You're doing important work. I mean, not that you need me to tell you that, but I'm gonna tell you anyway. I think that it's incredibly relevant to not only be a creative person and putting your ideas out in the world, but also being someone who can create platforms for other creative to do. Like it's just really important work. So we're coming toward the end of our conversation today. I do have like one or two more questions for you, and then we can kind of come to the conclusion. So my first question: community important to you?
Say now. So what now? Community
Why
what?
why why is why is community important to you? Like you've been building community, part of a community there, but like why is it important to you? If you had to articulate that.
I think Nino Brown said it best. Like we all we got. I grew up in a very old black church, and they were all about their liberation theology. Um, and it was legit a community. Like, I had aunts and uncles in the church that I shared no blood with, never been to their house, but they treated me like I was their child. I have friends that I've known for my entire life that are like my own siblings. And for the most part, I just know that if I'm not doing the work that I'm doing right now, somebody's going to miss their blessing. In the same way that it took me forever to get to the position I'm in because somebody wasn't on their job, right? So if we're going to get any work done, it needs to be done laterally. And that's community for me. I'd rather make a net than climb a ladder.
I couldn't better note, and you actually the next part of my follow on question. So you put the bow on the gift today. Or any last thing you'd like to say before we?
Any last things I'd like to say? Uh, Free Palestine. Boys ain't did nothing wrong. Be on the right side of history. Come see me this weekend. Love you. Peace.
Thank you for that. So here's the first: the Gantt Center's goal is to provide program and inspire. The support of viewers like you allows to expand its reach and further programs like today's open air. Lend your center by texting give Gantt, that's GIV, the number to 999. Also, be sure to live to this channel for future programs, content. Thank you all for joining us for a great open air session, and we look forward to joining us 24 for our next open air. Everyone, happy holidays. Have a great evening.